T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Shout out to US ARC and all US ARC members. If you don't know what US ARC is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what US ARC is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a US ARC member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with US ARC organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a US ARC member. And if you can't become a US ARC member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what US ARC is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every US ARC member and US ARC supporter out there. True.
All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Krista on the Girls Who Love Reptiles on the one and only Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile podcast in the world. We're on episode 34, and I have wonderful Miss Sarah here from Rainy Day Geckos. We're going to focus on Chahouas tonight. Really excited. That's a species I've been wanting to add the past year. So if you're not following her on Instagram, we'll talk about what all social media is on, but go ahead and follow her if you haven't. If you are new here, go ahead and hit like, of course, but also subscribe, the notification bell, so that you get notified whenever we go live. We are 7 days a week bringing to you content from a wide variety of species. So this is our weekly schedule that we got going on. We are going a little bit of an hour earlier tonight. We're going to kind of see how that goes. So I'll probably have to change that on our schedule too as we go and kind of see how that works out. But of course, we have the new breeder on the block, All in the Trees Tuesdays, Cush's Corners Thursday, Trap Talk with MJ, which I'll actually be on Thursday this week with Emilio, MJ, and Dave Levinson. So that'll be a great episode. So tap in for that. Colubrids on Fridays, monitors on Saturday, of course, focusing on the girls on Sunday. So hope you guys are all doing well. I'm coming off of Tinley, which was a lot of fun. A lot of you came up to me and said you really enjoy the content. You love watching the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast. So that meant a lot to me. I was on cloud nine, all you guys coming up and saying hello and introducing yourselves. So that was fantastic. I think I came up with a little bit of a cold or something. I'm doing okay today, but my voice is a little bit strained. Could also be allergies because I deal with really bad allergies in the springtime. But anyways, the show is fantastic. Picked up a few ball pythons, of course, but again, the memories will last a lifetime there hanging out with you guys. So that was a lot of fun. So say hi to just a few of you guys in the chat. So we got Mike here. Thanks for tapping in. Oh, it's really cool about getting into geckos. Awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited about this episode tonight to learn more about them. We got Amanda. Thanks for tapping in. Yeah, you guys were on vacation. Saw you had a couple ball python clutches, so that's a lot of fun. Reptiles Naughties. Thanks for tapping in. Let's see, we got Dickie Foster. Thanks for tapping as well. We'll kind of few others here, but we'll kind of finish it up with Boza. Thanks for tapping in as well. Turn on the banner here. But yeah, super excited to have Sarah on tonight. Like I said, I was interested in the Chahouas, I would say last summer. My vending buddies, Anonymous Gecko, who are sometimes right beside me, they breed Chahouas and brought them to the show, and they showed one to me, and it was a really beautiful, pretty equally pink and green gecko, and I thought it was super pretty. So they told me a little bit about it, went home and did some research. I've been kind of slowly doing my research since then, and found Sarah actually on MORPH Market as I've been kind of perusing stuff just to see what my eye looks like, and a lot of her geckos came up, so I started following her on Instagram. Has really, really nice high quality geckos, and so I wanted to bring her on the show to discuss her project. Sounds like she's been doing it for a decent time, so I want to get that experience on, talk about that. She also started a YouTube channel recently, so I listened to those videos this past weekend, rewatched one today actually, and found them to be super helpful. So yep, super excited to have her on. We'll bring her on here. All righty. How's it going?
Hello. Hey, it's good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. A lot of people just now coming into the chat, which is great. How's your weekend been?
Oh, pretty chill. Yeah, just kind of hanging out and doing stuff. I was preparing actually to shoot another video, so last night I was doing stuff for that. And
Okay.
yeah,
Very cool.
just otherwise just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of doing. I put together a rack yesterday. Watched some videos today, including the ones on your channel. Which is the video on that you're gonna make next?
I'm doing a review of the Geckopia flex bridges because I wanted to try them. I have a special needs lychee, and so I've been looking at those to see if that might be good for her to hang on to, because one of the things that they talk about is like that they're good for animals with disabilities and easy to grip. So I figured while I'm trying it out, I may as well do a review video of it and see how it turns out for us. So
okay,
I was just working on that last night.
Cool. I think he does leopard geckos as well. So I've seen some of. I think it's the right guy, I'm thinking it's Geckopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. He does leopard geckos as well. So yeah, I've followed him. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that'd be cool too. So you do lychees. What are all the species that you breed, and how long have you been doing this? And tell us kind of that. It's one of my favorite questions, but that journey kind of question to where you started, where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, I technically started breeding geckos around 2012. So, and I started keeping them like a year prior to that. And then, previously I've always loved reptiles, and we've had them, when I was growing up. My mom was really into animals, and so we were lucky enough to be also exposed to animals growing up. So it's always been something I've been interested in. But in terms of like rainy day geckos, we started in 2012, and I work with 4 species of geckos, but I have only really successfully bred lychees once. And we produced one lychee, and she's still with us. So I do have a couple available just because, I haven't had much success with them. And I was thinking of selling a couple of them. But then we also have crested geckos. I just started with gargoyles this last year. I just got my first couple of those. But Chahouas are our main sort of species that we work with, that and crested geckos. So I started with cresties, actually.
Okay. And how many like cresteds and Chahouas do you breed every? I'm sure probably variable, but traditionally how many do you produce?
We keep it really small. Like compared to most other breeders that I know that are like, breeding like 30 pairs or something, I breed like 7. I keep it pretty small just because previously, at least before this last year, both my husband and I are like full time. And so it's just kind of like, well, this is a hobby, and I didn't want to get overrun. And so I tend to keep it small, but I'm actually ramping up a tiny bit this year. So I'm thinking of doing like 6 or 7 pairs of Chahouas. And then I have currently a couple pairs of crested geckos. I think three pairs of cresties. So far, only a couple have produced eggs, and none of the Chahouas have laid yet. So we have a late season. So all the eggs will come at once in like a couple of weeks, probably.
Okay, it would be a big rush. That's cool that you keep it small. It's what I've always wanted to do a few species, but do them on a high level, high quality, but very small number, because I also have full-time job as well, and it's only me, so I'm very stressed out about it becoming too much. So yeah, over the years I've slowly, started to ramp up. I actually ultrasounded my ball pythons today. I have one that's about to ovulate, and the others are just starting to develop. So I'm like, it's probably going to be a very, very late season on them for me. So,
How
but
many do you put together usually?
let's see, I have like 40 right now, but a lot of them are growing up. Because I just got in a couple years ago. So this year I'm trying for about 6-ish. I think last year I did 4, which was my first year. I think 6 to 8-ish I'm trying to get to go. And then next year is when a lot of them will start coming online. And then I do the leopard geckos, and they've been pairing pretty well. I've had a few clutches of eggs. I think I'm pairing 6 to 8 girls, which is the most I've done the past few years. I've slowly kind of ramped up those too. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's very small compared to a lot of other people as well, which I'm okay with.
It's kind of probably a bit dumb, but like I have so many animals that I don't breed that are just taking up space because we keep it small. So like I could put it, like 30 pairs together, but I try to resist the urge to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a bunch that are usually benched for the season. But I could go crazy and just, do a whole bunch of pairs if I wanted to, because I do have a lot of animals.
It kind of reminds me of my friend. He lives right up the street from me, Joe from Wildcard Geckos that does leopard geckos. He describes it as kind of having like a genetic library where he has a ton of animals, but he doesn't breed them all. That way, if he wants to pull from something, it's like there already. So it's kind of a similar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even though you have the animals, you don't have to breed them. So, one early question I want to bring up too, I've heard a little bit about is Chahouas versus Chahoua and Chewy. So what's that kind of, is that a huge debate or?
It's a debate, but like it's not, I don't know, it's not like a big deal really to me. I think I could, like, I was firmly in the Chahoua camp for what, when it was brought up, because for me it's like GIF versus GIF is the way I have to think of it. Is like people said GIF for so long, and then the creator was like, no, it's GIF. GIF is incorrect. And then people were like, okay, we should start calling it GIF. And then I'm like, I'm not going to call it GIF. We've been calling it GIF for too many years. So that's kind of how I was feeling. And because like Latin is so, I don't specialize enough in Latin and dead languages, but specifically Latin, and like Latin used in science has its own sort of set of rules, but they're not like set in stone rules. So the reason that it switched from Chahoua to Chahouas is just because of how it should be pronounced in the Latin that is used for like biological Latin. So the CH sound is a ka sound in that use of Latin. Right. So that's where that kind of came from. That change, that people had been calling them Chahoua for a long time, and then someone went, wait, I think we should actually be pronouncing it this way. And so it's kind of split. Like people will say one and then the other, or both, or because like you're not going to call them cooies.
So, I know, I love chewies. Like, I love that name for them. So maybe we'll just stick with chewies and Chahouas. So.
Yeah, I mean, I say Chahoua on my YouTube channel because I'm, I want to try and be consistent. And also a lot of the other people who are like well-known breeders are calling them Chahoua now. And everybody's kind of starting to transition over to that. And I'm like, well, I don't want to confuse people. So I figured I would go ahead and just kind of try to go pick that lane. But yeah, I mean, I still have to go through like a mental filter every time I say it.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's kind of makes sense with chondros. We don't call them chondros. So on the green tree python side. So yeah, I guess it makes sense with that. So
exactly.
Yeah. So it makes sense. I think it just takes time to say. I'm always gonna say chewies though, because it's a cute name and easier to a little bit. So
yeah, totally. I say chewies because it's so cute.
So getting into them a little bit, my understanding is that there are two main localities, right? Your Pine Island and your mainland. My eyes have sort of been drawn more to the Pine Island just because I really like the pinks and the reds, but kind of go over what you think or see the differences are. You know, does one make a better pet than the other one? I want to hear from your kind of perspective of them. Which ones do you work with? Both of them or one or the other?
I work exclusively with Pine Island, but that's just because I like Pine Island. And, you know, I figured I would pick a lane again. And that was the one that I went for because they seem to have more sort of inherent color variety and pattern variety and more white in, you know, just in general. That's not to say that mainlands can't have white collars, because they can. And some do actually have a fair amount of white in color. But I liked that generally Pine Islands are a little larger, and I generally just sort of like the colors that are more common in Pine Island. But honestly, like, you can't necessarily tell whether it's a Pine Island or a mainland just from looking at it. A lot of the time you can have sort of traditional like mainland traits in a Pine Island and vice versa. Right. So really the only way to know is to know the lineage of the animal. So I don't know about, you know, in terms of like working with them directly, because I don't actually own any mainlands. But I mean, I hear that they're great pets. Like, I think both of them are, and I don't think there's really any difference, like temperament wise or care wise or any of that. So it's just really your personal preference. I think mainlands tend to be a little bit smaller.
So I heard too.
And tend to be a bit more red. But I mean, it's really, you can't really tell like by looking at them, because there are plenty of red Pine Islands.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the big questions I see a lot in Chahouas groups, Chahouas groups, is like, oh, can you tell me, like, here's a gecko that I don't know the lineage on. Can you tell me if you think it's mainland or Pine Island? And you know, you can't really, unfortunately, unless you know where it came from.
That makes a lot of sense. It's similar in the gecko world too, leopard gecko world, where there's no way to know what it is unless you know the lineage. Yeah, I can maybe tell you it's albino or something, but I can't tell you which albino. So I get a lot of that too. Is it frowned upon to interbreed the two, because then you mix the blood that way? Like, are most breeders pretty set on, yes, we should keep Pine Islands with Pine Islands and mainlands with mainlands?
Usually most breeders are. But if you have an unknown animal, like if it were me and I had an unknown animal, for example, I would probably want to pair it to another unknown animal or cross, just because then, you know, you can just be like, well, this is my cross pair. But, you know, I think just being, as long as people are honest about what the animals are from, that as far as they know, as far as the breeder knows, because, like, you know, we can only go so far back as the data that we have on the animal. So, you know, I think generally, though, breeders prefer to keep Pine Islands with Pine Islands and mainlands with mainlands.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just didn't know if there was, obviously if they do mix them, hopefully they are upfront with that, and then you know which breeders do that. So I guess it's also a way of finding out who is reputable. So somebody who's coming in, how would they find reputable Chahouas breeders, or how do you recommend they go about doing that?
I mean, look up people's, you know, MORPH markets, look up their Instagram and their sort of history in the community. You know, go into the Chahouas groups and see like who's answering questions, and you know, who seems to have a lot of knowledge. And, you know, just generally, if you answer questions or ask questions of a breeder, if they're friendly and they're willing to give you information on animals, and you can ask them like, hey, what's the hatch date of this animal? And what's the lineage on this animal? You know, what are the parents on this animal? And they can answer those questions and also are helpful and give you the answers, then, like, to me, that means that's somebody that really tracks everything and takes extra care. That's not to say that, like, if, you know, somebody is like, oh, well, I'm not willing to take any extra pictures, that, like, that means they're like a bad breed or anything. It's just that I think for me, I tend to buy from people who are open and willing to like work with me and answer questions about animals, because they are expensive animals.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you want to know as much about them as you can, especially if you already have a collection and you're trying not to, you know, get something that's too closely related to what you already have.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I like the idea. I've joined a few groups, but that's a good idea of joining the groups and then seeing who responds to questions and all of that. And the lineage, it makes sense being able to present that information. So I feel like social media can sometimes be a little bit. Morph Market is good. You can go in there and see their reviews, but I feel sometimes I've ran into some issues on social media. You can fake it pretty well, in my opinion, on some aspects. So yeah, I guess hitting all the fronts of Instagram, Morph Market, or Facebook or whatever, and then joining the groups and seeing if there's kind of a commonality. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, you can probably also like ask other people around, like who may have bought from them, you know, if you really want to know, like, oh, what was your experience or any of that sort of thing. It's extra work to do that. But, you know, just if their animals look healthy and, you know, they're friendly and prompt with answering you, then, you know, generally those are all good signs that it's a good breeder.
Yeah. Yep. That makes a lot of sense too. Getting into it with the traits, we talked about a little of the mainland, but the pine, what sort of, you know, I see the pinks and see the white collars, you know, is that your main traits? And my understanding is they're pretty phenotypical. Like my brain with ball python and leopard geckos sometimes is it's leopard geckos is a lot of polygenic or line, but the ball pythons is very recessive or co-dominant with a little bit of phenotype. So I'm kind of switching my brain. But is that how they kind of work overall, and how do those traits kind of develop over time? Seems like the white collar stuff is like hot now or high price, at least when I look, but yeah.
Yeah. It's always been hot. I mean, the white collar and the white body, that's always been the number one thing that people have bred for. The entire time I've been in Chahouas, like that's the thing that determines value the most. And then usually like color saturation and then everything is kind of like distant third and fourth and fifth. But like I want to change that, because I think there's so much more to these animals that we can play with. Like there's all kinds of things that we haven't really done much more than kind of like surface level with, like pattern, for example, is one that I've been, you know, really working to try and hone specifically pattern, because these animals are very cryptic. They, you know, sometimes it's hard to like make sense of what's going on because it just looks like a bunch of like mishmashed.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you start to break it down, you start recognizing like, oh, okay, like these ones have like rosettes going on down the back. This one has like a stripe, and then it kind of stripes out the stuff on the sides. Like maybe that's something, you know. And like the swirl project that I have is, you know, working towards a really intricate pattern of sort of swirling that naturally occurred in one of my animals that I wanted to enhance. So, yeah, I mean, right now with Chahouas, it's pretty much like selective breeding phenotypes. But like, I'm sure that there are traits that we just haven't really like fully mapped out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure there's stuff that is like codominant and recessive, but we just haven't done the work to figure out what things are.
Right.
You know, dominant, codominant, and recessive. So yes, it's pretty much currently all about the phenotypes because that's what you can see. And that, you know, with Chahouas, it's kind of still like I mentioned in another interview, it's like the Wild West still a little bit. It's kind of like, you know, we've been working with these things, but we don't necessarily know exactly how they work. You know, I don't know if there's like a hypogene or pastel gene, but it feels like there is because I see things that I could be like, I'm pretty sure that's got there. If there's hypo, that's probably got it. But like we haven't mapped things out yet. So
I see. Yeah, somebody knew
it's like, yeah, it is phenotypes, but like I think that like with a bit of work, we could get to the point where we have known morphs, like with crested geckos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as a new person kind of getting in, that's, I would say, pretty attractive in a way. For me, when I get in something, I want to, I don't know, put my mark on it or do something, cool. It's like that scientist sort of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't want to do stuff that's already been done. Like, I have no sort of desire to create the same thing from the parent. I just want to increase it better. So that's why I kind of like that aspect of the line breeding or the phenotype. You can kind of set yourself feel like a part a little bit more. I mean, I don't know. I see that on the leopard gecko side when I'm looking through, and you can your eyes can definitely tell quality between animals, even though they have the same quote unquote gene or phenotype. They still look different. Is that similar in these guys too?
Absolutely, yes. Okay. Like, I would say that across the board, for any species, but like, to use crested geckos for an example, because they have morphs that have been sort of more mapped out and not discovered, but mapped out and found that like you can have two animals that have the same morphs, the same genes, but one looks kind of blah and the other looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
As it's like, for example, cappuccinos, that's a morph that is, has been around for a few years. And when it first came around, like most of the animals had really terrible structure. Like their head crests were very small, mm-hmm. and most of them were just kind of brown. But with time and with a lot of breeders working with them and like pairing them to like their best animals that had good head structure and good color and all that, like they started to bring out other qualities in that gene that like made the animals look way more amazing than when they first discovered it. So like I think selective breeding always has a place. Mm-hmm. Even if you do have like, if you're just working with like recessive and dominant, and it's like, okay, put this together, and you get this however many chances of.
Yeah.
But like even in that, you can still selectively breed.
Yep.
For like, okay, yeah, so I have like a pied, but like I want a pied with high orange, or like, I want a pied with like smiley faces or whatever it is that you want to like go for. Mm-hmm. And like choose animals that are, just simply pied, but they have whatever else quality that you like, that you want to try and reproduce. So.
For sure. Yeah. I'm kind of seeing that more and more on the ball python side where, yes, it is traditionally a more incomplete dominant, or we say codom, and then recessive. But even within those incomplete or codominant traits, there are some phenotypic differences where maybe stuff has been line bred. Some of it's testing to be the same when they do the shed testing genetically, but to your eyes are still a difference. So there's still an opening there to be able to, it's going to take longer and it gets harder when you breed, because you're like, do I choose for the gene or do I choose for maybe this animal that has less genes but phenotypically looks, better, if that makes sense. So I haven't come across that, but I know it will come. So we'll see when it does come, which route I decide to probably play the long game is what I've heard. Nothing's like a shortcut in breeding animals, you do it for the long-term type thing.
Yeah, definitely true with Chahouas. It take like 2 to 3 years to reach maturity, sexual maturity. So you gotta wait.
Gotta wait. That's what I'm getting. And I think this would be a good time maybe to show some animals you got and kind of describe the little bit of traits that we were talking about, so people kind of
sure
show that too. So yeah, I can either pull some up on Instagram, or I know you got some live ones near. You could probably do both, but
I just have one. Have one here that I've pulled out because all my animals are downstairs.
Oh, we could show this one first, and I'll go on Instagram a little bit and show some.
She's fired way down, so like
I'll probably show her.
She's been just chilling over here.
Yeah, I'll show on Instagram too. So I think you got a picture of her on there.
Yeah, but this is her fired down. So they change color. They do what's called firing up and firing down, where they can change dramatically. They have like a light phase and a dark phase.
Okay, so she's in her
So
light.
this is her in her pale light phase right now. Let's see if I can hold her up. Oh, I know you're slipping.
And what has triggered them to go a fire up versus down that you've seen?
Oh, a variety of things. If they're sleeping, they're often fired down, or if they're relaxed, they're fired down. If they're warmer, they tend to be fired down versus cooler. If they're cold, they tend to be fired up. They'll also fire up whenever they're like excited. So, for example, when I first paired geckos together, both of them are going to be like fired up and sort of staring at each other and on guard. Also, like when you spray them at night, they'll often fire up. Probably just from being a little colder from the mist. Unsure if it's that or something else. But right now she's just very relaxed. She wasn't panicking at all being in that little
That's good
holding container. She's just chilling.
She's my favorite one in your collection video, so
she's really sweet.
So yeah, and I'll show a picture on my Instagram too, but you can kind of describe I see a white collar there. Is that what they...
Yeah, so she's got white collar and then she's got body white, which is the thing that a lot of breeders are really going for, because once you get that white on the body, it can explode outwards and you can get way more white on the animal than if it's just a white collar. But sometimes you can get like an animal that has like a high white collar and then no white here, which is more common. But once you start getting that white on the body and you start breeding that in, and especially if you have both parents having a bit of that, your chances of having like really high white offspring increase dramatically.
Okay. And it would be obviously less so if you bred like a high white collared animal to more of a colored or saturated animal, right? You would get offspring that maybe have some white color, but obviously not as much as the parent would, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly how it works, which is why, the white is so valuable, because it's not necessarily a guarantee. Even if you have two like white animals, like you'll get a range of babies, some that have almost none and some that have a ton, and you'll get a range in there. But you can get white collar animals from animals that have almost no white. If they have even a little bit, I think they have the genetic potential to pass on white to their offspring. It's just how often that will happen. So when I first started my pairing, one of my founding pairings, Garnet and Onyx has almost, he's living with somebody else now, but he's still around. He has almost no white. And just like a teeny little bit like on the shoulders, like very, very, very like a couple scales almost. And then Garnet didn't have that much either. She had like a small collar, like maybe a third of that size. Okay. And together they produced Moonstone eventually. Moonstone is one of the founding animal. Well, she's the female of the pair Moonstone and Tiger Eye, which have produced this animal here.
Okay.
So, over a few generations, you can really bring that out, but it does take time and luck, because a lot of their animals would come out with no collar. So it's kind of the more collar, or the more white you start with on the animals that you're breeding, the more likely that the animals are going to come out with collars, and larger collars, and more on their bodies as well.
Okay, not guaranteed, but more likely.
Sure, yeah. There's no guarantee. But the cool thing about doing what you suggested and pairing an animal that has high color with an animal that has high white is that you may get animals with both, and that's what we've been doing. So, I have a pairing that was my specific goal. The
Okay.
male is very bright, but he does have white collar as well. He's the most expensive animal I've purchased, honestly. And then we bred the female who has very high white, but isn't like super saturated color. It's like a dark maroon. The little bit that is left that you can see her base color. So I paired her with him with the hopes that I would make animals that were like super vibrant and super white. And so far we've succeeded. So that's cool.
It's kind of what my eyes sort of like. If I had to choose one over the other one, I would definitely choose for the higher color, like where the animal is mostly pink with a little bit of green for that contrast versus an animal that has the white collar. I just love the color stuff. And then I've seen some where they have the color and the white, and I kind of like that as well. But I know that the price just like goes up with that. So it's trying to find out, which one. I just like the color stuff a lot. And then maybe
and there are some people that are just like huge color fans. Like they're like, oh, I don't really want the white. I just go high color. Which like it makes it easier for you if that's what you want to start with, because they're going to be way more affordable. Like the high color ones never go for as much as the white collars. So you can get in, lower, definitely. But also then, the babies will be like, you're probably not going to sell them for thousands of dollars or anything. But, if it's what you want to do and that's like the thing that you're passionate about, like that's something I generally think is like, you should work with what you're excited by.
Yeah.
Like what gets you pumped up. And then like, even if it's currently not super valued, like it may eventually become that with the work that you put in, because you've made something like spectacular. I've seen that with crested geckos where like red porthole projects, like normally not very, super valuable or anything, but I know there's at least one breeder who's made it like their thing and they focused on it for years. And then their specific, project goes for like a lot of money because they have made like incredible animals because they have a vision for it,
That's what, at least for me, I know you can start off on all ends of the spectrum, but for me, start off at like that kind of level and then slowly grow into, especially if it's a new species, with spending money and all that. How, I guess somebody's just wanting to start in, obviously there's variations in price, but what's like a standard price where you can get in, maybe get a few pairs, still like good quality stuff, and then kind of work it from there. I don't know if it's a question you can ask because it's so variable in what you can spend, but does that question kind of make sense where I'm kind of getting at? Something that's just getting started, wants high quality stuff, but again, it depends on what you're interested in because the high white stuff is pretty expensive.
Yeah, I think just it really depends on what you're going for, and it depends on your starting budget and how long you are willing to wait for babies to grow up, because you can buy babies and they're generally going to be a bit less than adults, but then you have to wait. So it's that kind of trade-off of time versus money when you're starting. So if you're starting with a bit of a higher budget, you can get animals that are close to ready to breed or ready to breed. And then you can get started, in that season instead of waiting for 2 years plus for your animals to grow up. Also, when they're babies, they go through an ontogenetic color change. So babies are like brown and black and white. And so you can't necessarily always tell what they're going to mature into color-wise. You can look at the parents and you can kind of guess, but like even I'm often surprised about how they turn out. So it's also a little bit of a gamble when you're buying babies, just because you don't necessarily know how they're going to turn out color-wise. There's things that you can look for you can train your eye to kind of be like, I think this one's going to go red. I think I see some warm tones here. You know, I think this one's going to be high saturation.
Mm-hmm.
But like beyond that, it's hard to know for sure, especially since green comes in like after 3 years. Like,
Wow.
it takes, yeah, it's like if you're going for like, oh yeah, I want a super green chewy. Well, you probably want to start with an adult.
To
Because
know. Yep.
yeah, because you'll know like how much green that animal is going to have, and the green will continue to increase for most of their lives. So an animal can look vastly different 10 years later.
Okay. Okay. That helps too. Cause yeah, I was kind of thinking about buying adults or at least ones that are a couple years. Cause I see the babies and I watch them on the Palm Street auctions. It's like tempting, but I'm like, I just can't get, and they'll show the parents. And I'm like, I can't make that jump sort of getting into it. So that's good to know that that's an okay route. Sometimes on the ball python side, like a lot of people think it's better to get babies and grow them up because the animal gets used to your environment. But it sounds like on the gecko side, it may be, do some people getting and just go straight into adults and go? I know it's not probably a fair shot that they're going to go when you get them, obviously, but I don't know if that was the same kind of thought process on the gecko side or not.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice having them and raising them yourself and having them used to eating the food that you want to feed them and the schedule and, you know, how you run your room and everything, and, you know, just get used to you, because they are smart enough to recognize people. Like, I know it sounds wild, but, you know, they can tell people apart. They know me from a stranger. And you can just see it in their body language. I'll have, you know, I'll be at like a, you know, somewhere and someone's like over at my house or like at a show, and I'll try to like pass them a gecko, and the gecko like starts to take a step, and then they're like, wait.
Who is it?
And they like take their hand back, like, no, thank you. I don't want to go there. No, thank you. Like, they just realize that that's not a hand that they're familiar with, so they have to really think about it. They're smart. That's something I really love about them.
I think that goes with all reptiles. I think that's a big misconception people have about reptiles in general, is that they're not smart, they're dull creatures. But no, they're really not. So my ball pythons are very interpersonal. I had somebody come over and I put one in their hand, and of course it balled up and got scared. And I told them, you know, if you give it back to me, I bet it's gonna unball and start cruising around because it knows me. And sure enough, when she put in my hand, immediately became unballed, started, you know, cruising around. She's like, wow, that's crazy. I'm like, they know who their people are. Just by the sense of the hand and the smell, they know. Leopard geckos too. Yeah, I have friends who, I think it's so interesting. They have a leopard gecko, and the husband is on a deployment right now. The leopard gecko had trouble eating, but would eat when it saw the husband on phone and heard his voice. It was like, oh, that's my person, and it started eating. I thought that was the most fascinating thing. But anyways, yeah, I think it sounds like that translates over to of course, the Chahouas and even the crusteds too. That they're
for sure. I would say that, like, of the New Caledonian gecko species that I work with, at least, they are by far the smartest.
Interesting.
They're the most sort of cunning and scheming. They're the best hunters, and generally the most observant and curious. So whenever you're doing something, they have to know what's going on. They have to be involved, like a cat, you know, that is like trying to help when you're doing something. And so if you're like typing on the keyboard and the cat's like, I'm going to sit on the keyboard.
Oh yeah.
Like these guys will do that. Like, I'll be walking around with a gecko on my shoulder and then be spraying cages. And they have to come down and like be on my hand on the sprayer and like looking and checking things out. Or just, you know, they'll learn how to escape by observing others having escaped. Like it's pretty wild. I've had that happen before.
Wow,
Like
that's crazy.
they're escape artists, so you have to, make sure to close their cage because they will find an opening or make an opening if it's possible.
That's really interesting. Another kind of questioning, comparing them to that popped up is, I go to quite a few reptile shows. I, of course, gravitated to these guys, but you just see a lot of the cressets. I feel like even lychees too. I mean, maybe it's where I'm at, but I feel like I don't see a lot of Chahouas at shows. Like, why do you think more breeders do the cressets and the lychees over these guys? I know they don't produce as many in a season, so I don't know how many lychees do, but that's probably part of it. But I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
I feel like Chahouas and lychees are about the same in terms of breeding difficulty.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why there are more lychees than chewies, to be honest. I feel like there should be way more chewies available, just because for me, I think they're the best pet. Like, of the New Caledonian geckos, they are the most enjoyable to handle. They are very robust. Like, I have lychees, and when I handle them, I can tell they're not enjoying it. They're tolerating it.
Yeah.
Barely. And they have this very kind of nervous and twitchy energy. Same with gargs. So far, I've found that my gargs have a very sort of nervous and twitchy energy. They're just kind of like, I don't know. And maybe it's just because they're newer in my collection. But most of the ones I've interacted with are just kind of like,
Yeah.
And crusties, of course, they're great, but they will jump, and you can't trust them. So
Yes.
they're going to take that leap into space, and you just have to be ready to catch them. Whereas these guys, because they have the prehensile tail, they rely on that way more than jumping for the thing that they want. So they'll just reach with their like little front hands and hang on with their tail instead of diving for everything, which just makes for a more enjoyable handling experience.
For sure.
So like, I feel like they should be the most popular, but I think the couple of reasons is that they're slightly harder to breed and, produce fewer animals. So like people getting in, jumped on my water glass. People who are getting in it for, a quick buck or something, or like, I want to ramp up super fast. Like crested geckos are going to be easier for that because they produce way more and way easier. You just basically put two together that are of weight and you get eggs. It's very easy. Whereas these guys take a bit more finesse.
Okay.
But like once you know how to do it, it's really not that hard. You just have to be, watchful when you pair them and kind of know what red flags to look for when they aren't compatible. But otherwise, it's just like they produce less and they require more bugs. So that's another reason I think probably they're not as popular, because a lot of the time, and it's a misnomer too, because crested gecko breeders will also agree crested geckos need bugs as well. But oftentimes they can be marketed as like, you just have a complete diet. They don't really need to eat bugs. But you should be offering bugs to both species, and but these guys require them more in their diet.
That's what I was looking at too. Yeah, the lychees, man, they scare me. I've handled some a few times. They just scare me. They're too big.
They're fun. I know they're a lot of people's dream reptile, so I feel lucky to work with them. But I keep this smaller locality also. And they're still scary. Like we have a male that's terrifying. He will like challenge you from across the room.
Oh my.
Yeah. Like slam against his door and start barking with his like big muscular chest, like being like, come at me, bro. Like
that's crazy.
When he sees me coming in the room, and I'm like, this will be fun. So
pass on that. No, I'm good. They don't interest me in any So I think the ones with the pink, of course, you know, I like the colored stuff.
They're gorgeous too, and they're just like an incredible animal. Like, you have to respect their incredible size, and you know, everything about them is pretty impressive. But holding them is not as, for me, like, carefree. Yeah. These guys, once you get them out, like, for the most part, there's some that are skittish.
Been chilling,
but like, for the most part, they're just gonna hang out and chill and just be kind of curious, and they're not gonna be stressed as much. Like, some will be, because they're animals all have different personalities.
Oh yeah.
So you can't really ever guarantee, like, oh, this species is going to act this way, because all of them are different and have their own quirks and stuff. But for the most part, like, they kind of want to come out sometimes. I find, like, they're curious. They're out, like, on the front, like, pawing on their door, or like they'll come out if you open their door and talk to them, and, you know, want to see the room and see, like, basically get that enrichment of satisfying their curiosity of their surroundings. So I don't feel as bad holding them because they seem to
prefer human contact.
Like, prefer this to, for example, if I was to, like, clean their cage and put them in, like, a holding bin or something that they couldn't get out of, they would much rather be out and being held while that was all happening than being stuck in a strange bin.
Very cool. We're about the halfway mark, so I'm gonna do some commercials, and then we'll come back, and I want to talk about how to keep them, the feeding, and what makes them difficult, and how you breed, and go from there and finish it up. So yeah, we'll do that real quick. We'll cut that's so awesome, just seeing her just chill out, and I didn't realize they were that personable. So very cool. It's awesome. Let me play this. I'll be right back.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, and plenty other arboreal snakes have been quite the popularity here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which brings me to today's sponsor, the Reptile Perch. Head over to thereptileperch.com and Reptile Perch on Instagram. See what type of design PVC perch is best for your arboreal reptile. But first and foremost, I would also check out David Brom's Green Tree Python availability on the website. And you can also check out his Instagram just to stay current on any projects or any productions that he posts. Thank you so much, David Brahms, for your ongoing support. Looking forward to seeing what you have to show in the 2025 season. Shout out to today's sponsor, and that is the COCO Dude. #1 chipper substrate in the game. Everything you see behind me, all my emerald tree boas, my green tree pythons, are all over that beautiful COCO chip over at cocodude.com. Go to cocodude.com, place your order. I prefer the COCO to go. It's already broken down, less dust, the chunks are perfect. But yes, I like the COCO to go. No matter what your total is in your cart, if you put in TRAPFAM25 in the promo code, you are now going to get 25% off your entire order. Thank you so much, the COCO Dude, for doing that for all my trappers. Again, #1 substrate in the game. Less duck sheds, less dust. It's the best place to be, and that's the COCO Dude. Again, cocodude.com. Put in promo code TRAPFAM25 and get yourself 25% off the entire order. Thank you so much, COCO Dude. Cheers.
All right, cool commercial back. We'll kind of get into the breeding and keeping them. And then those in the chat, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in. We'll discuss them as we go along. If you guys just good with hanging out, that's fine too. But yes, we talked about the age of them, 2 to 3 for the females. Is that the same for the males too? About 2 years? Okay, 2-3 years. Okay. So you get them up to that age. What size enclosures do you keep them in? How do you keep them? The feeding part, you can go over the general care that you recommend for these guys.
I would say minimum 18 by 18 by 18, usually 18 by 18 by 24. But I have pairs in 18 by 18 by 24. You can go bigger though. They will explore their cages. For babies, though, I would say stay on the smaller side while they're growing, just so that you can monitor their food. So I tend to, upgrade throughout their life cycle until they reach adulthood. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
I know I asked a lot of them. With the enclosures, do you do Exoterra? Is there a specific brand that you do, or no, you just get any sort of glass?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a sort of amalgamation of different cages in my room. I'd love to get it all, unified, but in reality, that hasn't really worked out, because every time I try a new type, I'm like, there's something I don't like about it, and then I don't get any more of them. So I have glass cages, which I prefer for chewies, because I find that they like to have the visibility. I have tubs as well, like big, the big tubs with the vents cut in the side.
I've seen
and
those.
I have PVC as well, like the ones that are just like created, PVC enclosures. And those, because they're closed in, like I find that my chewies in those tend to be a little bit more nervous. It could just be my collection. And also one thing I wasn't sure I liked about them is that, like, you can't really stick stuff to the sides like suction cup. So I had bought like a bunch of those, and I was going to buy more, and then I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do more of those. So I've been buying more glass lately.
Okay.
Exoterra and Zoom Med. So kind of whatever is affordable at the time.
Yeah, that's what I've been kind of looking to for if I just want to do a couple pairs. I'm just trying to think. I think I could maybe do it on a big storage shelving unit with glass sort of enclosures. Maybe if I'm just doing a couple pairs and then the babies. I don't know. I've seen those really nice, like for the cressets, like the smaller, maybe they're like plastic, but they're still that like vertical kind of space for them. Maybe, I don't know. How do you keep the babies in a
the little babies?
Yeah.
I keep them in critter keepers, which I know a lot of people don't use those anymore. They use like rack systems, but I don't know. I've always kept them in critter keepers, and it's worked well for me. Just the amount of ventilation that they have, and I always worry with like bins that you're opening that you're gonna catch a little hand or a tail in there, because they like to hook their hands and their tails like on the lip of stuff. So if you're not looking and pulling a drawer out, like I worry that I would accidentally pinch something. So it's just like a weird fear of mine, but so that's why I keep them in critter keepers.
Okay.
And then I'll have like small, medium, and large, and then upgrade to 12 by 12 by 18s, and then 18 by 18 by 24.
Okay, that makes sense. I also heard a little bit of difference too on, like, some people use UVB for the breeder, sometimes heat. Like, what do you do? What's your preference on that?
I mean, it really depends on your room, your setup, and your sort of your natural house temperature, and like where you live and how the humidity is. We're in kind of the Seattle area, so it's cooler and generally more like damp and rainy here. So I keep my animals with UVB, especially the breeding animals. We don't use like a heat source. I mainly just use the UVB, and then we keep the room at a temperature that is generally good for them, like high 70s, with like a range of like where they are in the room. So like the higher the cage, sort of generally the warmer it's going to be. So.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm in Missouri now, but I'm moving to Southwest Florida this summer, so it'll be a big difference in temp. So yeah, it'll be pretty warm and humid. I feel like it'd be easy to just keep them in enclosures there. And okay. Yeah, just because I've seen where some people recommend like having a heat lamp, but then other people are like, no, room temp. So I just didn't know what that suggestion really was. So
I mean, some people do use heat.
Okay.
We just don't have all the heat stuff set up, and
It's a lot. Yeah.
you know, there's so many cages that like I worry that I would accidentally overheat, and that's way more of a danger with New Caledonian geckos. So I do know that there are people that use heat, and they say that their Chahouas will bask in the heat, and as long as you have a way for them to get away from the heat, then it's fine.
Right.
Maybe eventually I'll give it a try. So, I think my room is always growing and evolving. Eventually I want to get like misting systems and all kinds of stuff, but right now I'm unemployed. So
Okay.
I'm at where I'm at, and I'm working to get sort of more stuff, play with more things and try more things out. But for us, this is what's been working well. So
Okay. Yeah. That's why, as long as they're eating and they're healthy and stuff, that kind of is what to me makes, the difference. If they don't need it, I feel like, it can cause more harm than good on too much heat and electricity and fires and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm super scared of that happening too. And then our summers have been getting hotter and hotter. We had some really scary hot summers before, and we didn't have AC, and we had to do an emergency evacuation of all the animals. It was very scary.
Wow.
So we have a heat pump now. So we have the temperatures really pretty dialed in, because we have an extra heater downstairs where they are that is specifically just for the geckos, just for the gecko room. So we can have the house temperature, and then we can adjust their temperature to be warmer.
Okay. Yeah, that is not. Yeah, I have to think about the evacuation plan. I've heard, some people like fires happening and coming up with a plan. I think MJ is going to do a show on that too soon with somebody to go over that process, because I think every one of us reptile keepers and breeders needs to have that kind of plan in place in case something like that does happen. So
yeah, and I was just lucky enough that I had a friend that had working AC that was willing to let us move all of our stuff into their basement for a couple of days. It wasn't necessarily planned, but it was sort of, I put the call out and they answered, which was really great.
Yeah, it's good to have. I've met so many good friends in the hobby and industry that would just do anything for you, and that says something about us as I don't know if maybe those people weren't in the reptile.
Yeah, they weren't even in the reptile industry.
Oh, okay. Good people.
They were sort of from the other element of my life of the video game industry. So
cool.
But yeah, they were like, okay, yeah. So
bring all your reptiles. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that worked out with that way too. So yeah, we talked about enclosure stuff, and then what about the diet part of it? Because I have read that they need more insects and also calcium for these guys. That some people like. How do you go about that process? Mainly crickets, or what other?
Yeah, I use crickets. I know that a lot of people use like dubia roaches and other feeders. We've had the best feeding response with crickets just because they move in a really enticing fashion. And these guys are amazing hunters. So, dusted and gut-loaded crickets, I dust them with calcium. And then you can, it depends on whether you use UVB, whether or not you're going to want to have D3 in that calcium supplement.
Right.
But, you can just play it for that either way and get it with or without or both. And dust the bugs in that, and that will supplement, for getting that extra calcium there. But yeah, they put a lot of calcium into their eggs, so the females especially need extra calcium when they're getting ready to breed, and protein.
Okay.
Because they have very thick calcified eggshells.
Interesting. It's probably, I'm assuming, the leopard geckos, I always leave out extra calcium for the females too when they're in breeding season or laying season. So it makes sense. With the crickets, do you just order them, or do you actually keep them and breed them yourself?
I do not keep them and breed them. I would fail miserably. I'm so bad at keeping crickets alive.
Yeah.
I just ordered them and tried to like gut load them and feed them off as fast as possible because I don't know. I just do not have the magic touch with crickets. I was able to breed dubia, but then like none of the geckos wanted them, and so I sold off my colony. But they were breeding and they were doing really well. Nobody was eating them, and they were just getting bigger and bigger to the point where they were too big to feed off. And so I was like, I have all these roaches and no one's eating them. So I just sold them to another breeder that, you know, has her own dubia collections as well. So now it's just crickets. But yeah, you can feed all kinds of feeders to them. You want to be careful about if you're feeding something really fatty, but you know, various like hornworms and other things I know people will feed.
Mealworms. Maybe it's not as like a staple, but you can have them in.
Yeah, I mean, I think mealworms aren't really a great staple just because they have a high like phosphorus to calcium ratio, but they're probably fine as like a treat.
Okay. Yeah, that's what they do. It's what leopard geckos mostly feed them, but also dubia and cricket. Yeah, I'm getting more into the crickets just because I picked up a pair of knobtail geckos, and they're mostly like they like the crickets and the red runner roaches. So I know at some point I'm gonna have to order crickets and be able to keep them. They eat like 1 or 2 crickets every couple, like it's really minimum, but I'm gonna have to learn how to keep crickets alive long term. But it's good to know that you do without having to breed them, because I'm not so set on breeding the cricket.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a big waste of money to not to not like breed my own crickets, but I feel like that's probably the case with a number of breeders that just haven't you know, mastered breeding crickets and just buy like a ton from, you know, whatever source all at once and just get cricket shipments in, because that's the easiest way, even if it's maybe not the most like affordable way to do it.
Yeah, it's still not. I mean, some people told me too from mealworms for the leopard geckos. There's actually a local guy here that makes them, so I just go and pick them up there, and it's not that. I mean, yes, it's some money, but it's so much more convenient. I feel like crickets, I don't know, I get them from the local store. I don't need that many, but it's pretty cheap for what I'm doing. And I would see myself getting it. I guess if you, have a ton of animals, it makes sense. But if you just have your small scale, if I still stay small scale, then I won't have to worry about, because that's a whole, I don't want to have to breed my own crickets. So, with the pairing process, because I heard that's kind of difficult too. Like sometimes they'll not like the leachies, but they'll reject kind of. How often do you see that? And then is that why you kind of recommend having multiple pairs in case one female rejects the male? You can use another male, like kind of go about that process. Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend if you're starting to seriously think about breeding Chahouas, I do recommend having like at least a couple of different pairs as options to swap in case things just do not work out. But I haven't found that it's that common that they'll reject each other. It can happen, but like, I don't know. It's going to be anything I say is going to be like anecdotal from my own personal experience. But like, I've only had like maybe 3 or 4 rejections ever. And one of the times it was like a pair that had been together for a long time. And so it wasn't so much that they rejected each other, but they had like a spat at one point, and the male injured the female. So like that can happen. I mean, it's just why you kind of want to check your animals on a daily basis overall as a good sort of practice. But yeah, I mean, if you do, you know, a few of the precautionary things before you pair them, like you'll probably have success. At the least, they'll like maybe not produce well for you, like, but they'll probably live together okay. So it really just depends. But there are things that you can watch out for, like warning signs of stress If they continue to be stressed and exhibit those signs of stress, like after the first week of being together, they may not be compatible and you may want to consider separating. I have a whole YouTube video about it that I also paired live on camera, a new pair for this season, after explaining the steps that we take to kind of warm them both up and get them ready to be paired together. And then they, you know, I put them together. I show like various behaviors, like the male's breeding behaviors, and then yeah, ultimately whether or not they accept each other. So like at the end of it, they did. So I think that we're going to get some eggs from them for this year, but I don't know for sure because won't know until she lays. But so far they're living harmoniously together, which is great.
And you take them from their own enclosures and put them in a separate enclosure. I think I heard in a video. And then you take things from both their enclosures. Maybe I read that somewhere, but things from both their enclosures.
Yeah, I make a neutral cage. I make up a neutral cage that doesn't belong to either of them because they can be territorial. And if you introduce a male into a female's cage or vice versa, that's like an invader coming into their home space, and they're going to be like on the defensive and as like their first response, which may override like the sort of natural pairing and breeding response. So I try to just reduce that as much as I can by pairing in a neutral space and like beforehand, you know, swapping furniture between them so that they can kind of get used to the smell of the other animal.
Okay.
There's a couple things you can do that just kind of like get them in a better space to be paired, and then when you pair them, have them in a neutral space that doesn't belong to either of them, so they're both like kind of out of their element at the same time. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, and then do people usually keep them together the whole season if everything's good, or do people pair them when they see a lot?
Hang on a second. She jumped on the ground. I'm gonna get her.
She's like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, do you want to go back? Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh,
What were you saying?
Oh yeah. Do some people, granted, if the pairs are going well, do they keep them together the whole breeding season, or do they pair them when they see a lock and then remove the male and pair as necessary? Like, how does that work?
I mean, you can kind of do whatever, but for us, you know, for me, I like to just keep them together year round. They can pair bond. They can live together year round, and I feel like that's less stressful than like breaking them up and then having to do that whole song and dance over again of like, you know, trying to get them to accept another mate. Especially sometimes I've had difficulty with like a female not accepting a new mate if she liked her previous mate. But you definitely can. You can separate and repair animals, and people do it, and they say like, oh yeah, I pair like 2 or 3 different females to the same male in one season. But I don't know, I just, because of the, you know, I don't want to break something that isn't, you know, doesn't need fixing, I guess. Like if they're successfully producing eggs, like that's hard enough to get to happen. But like I generally just want to keep them together. I'll separate them if like the babies that they're producing aren't what I wanted for my project, or if they're not getting along, or you know, if I have some other plan, but or if the female really needs a break. But usually they go into like the cooling season and they naturally sort of chill out and stop the breeding behavior, and then you know, so because of that I generally just keep them together. If he was like harassing her all year round, I would probably separate them.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. I guess it's, you really just have to monitor them and know your animals well, and can tell if they're stressed or losing weight or something like that as a sign to or watch, I guess, the male constantly pestering her then as a sign to remove. Okay. Trying to think. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Oh, hey Ned, new guy here, crocodilian guy looking into geckos. Yeah,
Very cool.
very cool. Yeah, he's from Costa Rica, so that's really cool.
That's awesome.
I know we have people from all over the Marcus. I didn't see him in. He usually, if he does watches the replay, but he's in Sweden, so he's usually watches too. But yeah, pretty cool across the world. And then yeah, about 6 eggs I've read they hatch, and then yeah, 6 eggs they have. They lay a clutch. How often is that? Every month?
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months. Okay. Okay.
And they can lay up to 8. I've seen Moonstone and Tiger Eye lay 8 eggs a season usually. But usually 6 is the max. 8's kind of A plus, I guess. Most of them will be maximum 6, and like out of that, like sometimes 3 of the eggs are infertile. So, you know, you're not looking at a lot of eggs a season for the most part.
Okay. Okay.
So between 0 and 8 per pair.
0 and 8. Yeah, that's what I've heard. They're just getting them to the breed, and then that makes sense why not a lot. Maybe everybody does them. I don't know. I think they're really cool, and I like them, and be cool just to try.
They're so great. Like once you figure it out and like figure out how to pair them, and you know, you go through the whole cycle and you feel more confident. Like I'm surprised that more breeders don't focus on them, because they're like, for me, they're just the most enjoyable to raise and work with, and they have so much potential genetically, and they're just a joy to work with every day. So I'm championing them. They should be the #1 gecko, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think they're the best. Yay, chewies.
Yay, chewy.
I think that everybody should have a chewy and realize how cool they are. Because it's hard to explain. I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but unless you actually like handle one for yourself,
right,
you don't truly know how awesome they are. They're so cool.
And yeah, when I remember seeing them at the vending, I was like, wow, yes, I like species here and there, but when I saw that, it just looked really cool. That mossy, pinkish look, and they got out, handled it, and I don't know, I just was somehow sort of gravitated to that. I think. And what are your thoughts on the market as a whole? I mean, I don't like talking about getting into animals only for the money. I think that's a bad outlook about it, but I feel like, you know, looking at it as a sort of a business part of it seems like the market for them has stayed relatively stable compared to other species. Like, what are your thoughts on the market?
No, it's gone down quite a bit.
Okay.
Like the sort of entry level animals have gone down.
Okay.
The highest end have stayed high, but the animals in the middle, I think, have kind of lost some value. I think that's just because right now not a lot of people have that kind of money to spend. I think that like there's also the element of the international market. You know, crested geckos, for example, are really big in Korea.
I've heard about that. So I've seen that.
Yeah.
But the chewies haven't hit the international market yet.
They haven't really hit that like that sort of like fever that crested geckos have, and I think it might be because the crested geckos have morphs, and the chewies, they don't have mapped out morphs yet, but like that's coming. Like that's definitely gonna come with time. So as far as like, whether they're a good investment gecko, I mean, like if you're looking for a quick turnaround, no, because they take a long time to mature and everything, and you know. But in terms of like potential, like genetic potential, future sort of potential, the sort of lack of saturation in how many people like really focus on them, I think that there's a lot of room for growth. Like, I think our time is coming. I think that some people have started to like lower their number of chewies in their collection because they're just, they're not selling overseas or various things. But like, I think if you just hang in there, or like, if you're a new breeder and you're trying to think about whether or not to get in, like, now's a good time to buy your animals, because they're going to be easier at the entry level, especially, than they've been before. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard question to answer. Like, oh, how is the market on them? Because it's not like I have my finger on the pulse of the market. I'm not a big breeder, so I'm not, I'm not super like connected. I don't have, a lot of knowledge in terms of like the international market on these guys. But I feel like once people start really like seeing the potential in them as incredible pets, and then also for all the morphs that they probably have that we just need to like define, I think they'll pick up. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know if other breeders feel the same way, but that's just kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of what I said earlier. I find the not saturation really attractive because I am into pretty saturated markets with the ball pythons and leopard geckos. So it's kind of like the knobtails or not. Those are nobody really does those. So that's what also interests me about the chewy. Not that I like them as a species, but the fact that they're not so saturated that I can kind of get in, sort of build my mark, and kind of like just play around with it with not everybody doing them. Even though in the ball pythons and leopard geckos, you can still kind of find a niche, which is what I kind of made, and just really focus on those and do those the best that I can instead of trying to do too much. And even in ball pythons, I feel like everybody mostly does clown or something like that. It's real popular morph, so trying to do different things too. I like so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with ball pythons, but I do know a little bit. And one of the breeders that I was like really into following was like from a few years ago was Justin Kavilka, I believe.
Oh yeah,
And the way that like he took Axanthics and just ran with it, and like his booth at Tinley is always like just this. It just stands out because there's all these just pure black and white animals, which I'm really into. I love black and white. And I always thought that was so cool because whenever I'd talk to ball python people here, they'd be like, Axanthic, they just turn brown over a while, they don't have that. It's like, but he saw the potential in it and worked it into various other things, and like, just put a lot of time and effort into figuring out how to make them look good as adults. So I think it's just, if you have a vision and you have an eye for things, and you're like, I think I want to make, whatever it is, I want to make like a flaming red gecko. Like, I want to make it red and white. You can aim for that. Or you can, if you want a pure black gecko or like a pure white gecko, whatever it is, whatever like gets you excited. And you can do, a number of projects with them, but, just as some examples of directions you could go in.
Okay. Yeah, the clown, that's the really hot project right now for good reason. It's really cool. It's crazy seeing them out of the egg, and I'm seeing them in person as adults, and they still look pretty cool. My best friend's Emilio, he focuses on Axanthic, and yeah, it gets him real mad when people are like, oh, it's just browns. He specifically kind of line bred his that they look really good, and he's been doing it for 20, I don't know, maybe it's 20 years, I think it is, well, coming up, I think. Anyways, for a long time, so he's been able to even line breed that. So yeah, just goes to show you, if you put, all comes down, I think, putting the work in and not having the mentality of, quick buck. But I think there's also some sort of business minded. Otherwise, you just start you start spending, or maybe you just look at it that way, that you just spend the money and know you're not could not get it back, I guess is maybe better looking at it. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, like, I just think having a goal makes it so much more fun, because then it's like, you know, you're hatching out babies and it's like, oh, okay, what's the next step? Like, how can I take this closer to the direction I want to go? And, you know, you start learning with experience, like, okay, this one is probably going to be saturated. I'm going to hold this one back. You know? And just kind of developing that eye to notice, like, what things that you want to bring out and which animals might have the best chance at doing that. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff. I like doing that kind of thing. And I did a video about it, like just how to build a project from scratch and think about it in kind of a broad way.
I listened to that, found it pretty helpful. Yeah, the direction I like the colored saturated stuff, and then maybe long term, as I get my feet wet and adjust, I can bring in the white stuff and see how it goes. So cool. Awesome. We're coming up to about an hour and a half, which is where went by. These things go by super fast. I feel like I've learned quite a bit. Trying to see.
Awesome. Is there anybody in the chat that has a question?
I haven't seen any, but I'll give it a few minutes for people to ask. I feel like some like I said before when we were backstage, sometimes they ask a lot. Others they just, hey, how are you doing? They don't ask, which is fine. It depends on the night. I feel like most people are good with just chilling out in bed before work tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we can chill.
Yeah, we'll give it a few minutes, but how can people follow your work? Like what social media? You could talk about your YouTube that you've kind of started, how that's gone too.
Yeah, I just started a YouTube channel, so I have 4 long form videos out so far. Working on my 5th one. All of my socials and everything is Rainy Day Geckos. So Rainy Day Geckos on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Although Facebook, it's probably better to get a hold of me on my personal, just because Facebook business can be a little weird. Like, I can't necessarily ping you from the business page, so I might reach out to you if you're making a comment on something I've posted on my business page with my personal, just because it allows me to do that. Otherwise, yeah, Rainy Day Geckos everywhere. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. Yeah.
Cool. I don't think I've ever heard of Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's pretty new. There are a number of people that have sort of migrated over there from Facebook. But I'm on both, although I don't really check Blue Sky yet. I just kind of, made sure I was over there. But, you can always message me. Probably the one that's best is Instagram for an immediate response, because I'll see it right away for the most part. But yeah, and I'm also on MORPH Market, Rainy Day Geckos.
Yes, that's right.
And I do have a website, but it's in progress, so don't look. It'll be done later. I had it up and then I sort of let it languish for a long time, and now I need to dust it off and get it all good to go.
Good to go. Oh, there's one thing I want. We can do it real quick, but I was gonna show the your Instagram real quick, just to show.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We can do that just for a few minutes and wrap up and see if there's any questions. Sure. Yeah, because that's one thing I wanted to show. Okay, I think you can see it, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Just try to see. Is this Moonstone? Yeah.
Yes, that is Moonstone.
You talk about in the beginning. And where's the one that you had shown tonight? Is she on here?
She is on there, but you may have to scroll down a bit. Oh, that's her, but that's also fired down.
Oh, this one.
On the right. Yeah. But fired up, might have to scroll down a ways.
Well, that's fine. We can take a little point out any other like favorites you have. This one's like really, see, I love the coloration is where my eye kind of goes.
Yeah, actually that one hatched out with an orange collar. It was
Oh,
wild.
so this was orange and then it turned white.
Yeah.
This color part here. Oh, interesting. This one, yeah, I like the little pinks in there. I don't see her though. I'll keep scrolling. I just the one gecko. It's just
I
like,
know there's a lot.
it's okay.
That's her on the left.
Oh,
with
okay.
the-
It's her right there with the red. Yeah, I just thought she was like super pretty. Yeah, oh yeah. This is I love this right here. All this pink and red. This is my favorite look.
That one I got in a trade with LAC Hertz. So I did not breed that gentleman, but
Okay.
he's here. I haven't actually bred him yet.
Okay.
Because he didn't have that much collar, so I've been just kind of like trying to figure out who to pair him with, but I think I know who I would pair him with. It's just how many pairs I want to run in a season.
It's pretty too.
Yeah, that's her.
That's her again.
And
yeah.
That's the swirl project stuff there.
Oh, here we talk about kind of this. Is it this kind of?
Oh, yeah, no, go down one.
Oh, here, this middle one.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so this is a swirl. You were talking about this kind of definition on the back here. Oh,
yeah, just enhancing that really interesting pattern. Because like pattern is not something that really is concentrated on much,
right?
So I really wanted to play with it, and there's so many different directions you can go with it.
And this is something that just popped up in a pairing, or did you find geckos that had this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jade is the originator of the project, but there are other animals that exhibit that quality. That's her right there.
Okay, Jade.
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell. I can tell. My eye can see the swirling pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, when she was young, it was even more prominent, like really, really bold. She's chilled out in her older age, but you can still see it.
It's really cool. Yeah, they're so cool. Oh yeah, look at this. This is pretty neat too. Like I've seen some almost black guys too, like they're real dark white. It's pretty.
Yeah, we've bred some like that. If you scroll down further, you'll see more of those.
Oh yeah, here they are here.
That's one of our highest white that we've produced.
Yeah.
That's out of Moonstone and Tiger Eye, so that's a sibling to the one I had out tonight.
Okay. Yeah, look at how much white just usually my eye doesn't see them come down all the way to the front legs. It's usually like half that color. So
yeah, this is the body white I was talking about. Once you have a bit of that on there and you can sort of try to magnify that in offspring, you can try and go for things that have more coverage like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, this one's pretty. I love
That's a son of Jade and Pyrite.
Okay.
So Jade is the one that originated the swirl. So he's an offspring.
Really cool. Oh yeah, look at all the pinks in this one here. Yeah, that's just what my eye kind of likes. I mean, in my leopard gecko projects, I focus on the tangerine stuff, and the ball pythons I do sunset and ultramouth. So I just like that orange, red, pink tone. I don't know. Even this. I'm not super into cressets, but that's crazy pretty too.
Yeah, we love pink and red. Like when I started, it was with Cresties, and I wanted to make pink and creams. That was like my dream project. So that's why our business color is pink. Because I really wanted to work with them. But they take a long time to figure out if they're pink or red. So
I see.
Yeah, it was a rough project to start with for sure. But we produced some really pretty animals.
Is that, you said that was for cresses for the Chahouas? How long does it, maybe touched on this before, how long does it take for the color to come in, essentially? Like
it depends on which part of the color, like the base color like that. You can start seeing it coming in like at around a year or even less. But the green takes a while. It can take like 3 years.
That guy
that's our super chonky. She's just built like a tank.
Chunky
And
girl.
yeah, nothing I do makes a difference.
This one's pretty too. Yeah, I like the white, and then I
Yeah,
like
with that couple, like I really wanted to work with making that sort of like chunks of white, like chunk all the way down.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, cool. Oh, is this her too? That you showed
Yeah.
time? Okay, we'll finish up with her. Yeah, I could see that kind of look too, but awesome. All right. See if there's any questions. Are there any upcoming shows you're doing?
I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go to Flora Fauna still. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to vend there. It's not likely just because I'd have to ship all my animals in, and it's scary to do that and then have to ship them back, and they're like super high value animals. But I'm toying with the idea, and then like I'm usually at the Pacific Northwest reptile shows. So the next one is in Hillsboro, but I don't think I'm going to vend that. I haven't decided. I think it's mostly full up at this point, but I'm definitely always at the Puyallup ones, which are in Washington. And then sometimes there's like Oregon shows that I'm at too.
Okay.
But also on Palm Street. So if you want to follow me on Palm Street, I'm rainydaygeckos on Palm Street as well. Okay. I've done one live so far. I'll probably do another one coming up really soon. I just wanted to wait for some of my animals to get big enough.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely. Well, I've been watching some of the geckos. One I watched one from Sundown was a little bit before this, so I was watching that one. Just
he's got amazing animals.
Yeah,
I love him. Brian is amazing.
Yeah.
Looks like PJ's says that you love the mossy coloration. Yeah, their common name is mossy prehensile tail gecko, and they really live up to it. Like they blend in with any piece of cork bark. It doesn't matter what color or how much white is on them. Somehow they'll like completely camouflage into a piece of bark to the point where you're like looking in there and you're trying to find them, and they're staring you in the face and you don't see them. I've been fooled a few times, which, you know, it's always humbling to be brought down by like a tiny lizard that is right in front of you and you can't see them.
That's funny. No, that's what brought me to them too. I saw that's a really pretty animal, and it was mostly green with a little bit of pink. The one I saw, nothing crazy, but it was still really, really pretty. I just like how it was shaped and everything like that. Oh, yeah,
all of them are so beautiful, and they have these silver eyes that look like they have lightning streaks in them. I mean, they're just like that's the number one thing people say when they see them in person for the first time is how cool their eyes are.
It's really cool.
They're like bright silver.
Do they have eye traits that you've noticed or no?
Not really. Okay, more or less like, you know, red veining in there, but like that's it. They're all pretty much silver with black lines.
Okay, still pretty. Yeah, I have my leopard geckos almost looks like a galaxy on some of them because it's black, and then they have the white sort of speckling, and yeah, it's really pretty. And then I must have heard your ears burning, but yeah, Marcus from Lucid Bird or Sweden popped up. You'll probably have to catch the replay, Marcus, because we're wrapping up, but that's okay.
Sorry.
So, we may have converted some people in here, and I know a lot of my friends watch the replay usually the next morning too. So yeah, I thought it was a great show. I learned a lot. It definitely made me more excited to get them. It's just like I'm moving in July, so I'm like, it's probably more responsible of me to wait until after I move, but we'll see how. It's so tempting though, because I see them, I'm like, man, like, yeah, but it should probably be easier until I move, but we'll see. So
I mean, that's in a few months, so they would have time to act. I mean, it really depends on whether it's worth moving another animal when you have a bunch of animals to already keep track of. It's completely up to you, and like I'm always happy to answer as many questions as people want to ask me and wait for them to be ready, because I totally get that life happens, and you know, you want to feel good when you get the animal that you're like ready you're ready for it, you know? So,
For sure. Yeah, it's all
no
just
problem.
being patient and all of that's worth it, especially if I only want to do like a pair or two just starting out. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks Amanda. Great. Yeah, she's always tapped in here. Any last, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody, joining in, what would you give them? We'll kind of wrap up with that.
Oh, like generic advice?
I guess breeder advice.
Breeder advice.
For chewing. Probably loaded.
I guess follow where your passion is. Like you're going to want to work more and better when the animals that you're caring for are like what you're super into and excited about. So like in terms of what you breed or your projects, like just find the thing that makes you just your blood race, and it'll keep you going during the times that are hard,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good way to look at it too. Yeah, I've kind of done that when I look at pictures. I actually will cover the price up, so I'm not like gravitates towards that, and then I just look at the animals with my eye and then save them and be like, okay, I like this look, and go from there.
That's exactly what I advise doing. It's just like find the thing that just makes you go like, I want to make that, and then like you can find a way to get there. Okay. Just depending on your budget and your time and luck and your skill and the skill, you bring to actually breeding the animals.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good advice. So, okay, cool. I'll take you off screen here. I'll kind of wrap up. And again, thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed having your time. You produce really, really beautiful animals. I was so excited to have you on and talk. It was super helpful, and a lot of people in the chat and viewing tonight too. So yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. Feel free to find me on all social medias, Rainy Day Geckos and YouTube.
Awesome. Cool. I'll follow up with you. All right. I'll take you off there. So yes, awesome episode tonight, guys. Super excited. We're having a lot of heat coming too in these next several weeks. So be tuned to stay in. And next week we will have Reptico. So this is a big announcement, but Reptico has officially become a sponsor of the Girls Who Love Reptiles Sunday Night podcast. So this happened over the last couple weeks. So I'm going to have Channing and her dad Billy on next week, and we're going to talk a little bit about Reptico and their plan. And I plan on having Channing on every couple months just to give us some updates. But again, this is really big for the show. Super excited to have them on as a sponsor. So look for them next week. And then again, thanks so much to our guest tonight, Sarah. I learned a lot. Super excited to get into these guys a little bit. They seem like they have great personalities, make great pets, and just really, really awesome to have around. So again, if you guys have questions, reach out, and hope you guys have a great start to your week.